Right, so the first proper measure of how badly Labour are being affected election-wise has come out courtesy of Muslim Census, a Muslim pollster who've often been used by various mainstream outlets from the BBC, ITV and al-Jazeera to assorted newspapers to gauge the shape of the vote amongst Muslim communities up and down the country. And they've done the research in light of everything going on in the Middle East right now and our politicians' responses to them. And what their latest polling amongst Muslims shows is a catastrophically bad picture for Labour because of the damage Keir Starmer and his positioning on Israel and Palestine has done, for the political stunts he has pulled, and for his refusal to apologise. The damage done is costing Labour in terms of electability, in terms of retaining or losing seats in high Muslim demographic areas, and that could be the difference maker for them taking power at the next election or not. Keir Starmer appears to be a bigger liability to them now than ever before. Right, so the Muslim Census poll, let's not drag this one out too much longer. This was a poll of some 30,000 Muslims across 575 constituencies in the UK, so it's a massive poll even by typical polling standards. However, it is a snapshot poll conducted by filling out an online form, so caveats for likely not being as stringent as other polling data from other polling firms might be, the same checks and balances not being carried out. However, the result is so mind-blowingly bad for Labour that is kind of a moot point here. We're well beyond margins for error. The survey has found that Labour's vote amongst Muslims has fallen from 71% of the entire demographic at the time of the 2019 general election to today sitting at just 4.9%. Yeah, 4.9%. Keir Starmer's actions, for they cannot be attributed to anyone else in Labour. It's his refusal to act meaningfully to hold Israel to account. It is he who backed Israel committing war crimes. It is he who used an Islamic centre in Cardiff to score political points that have resulted in the almost universal wipeout of Labour's Muslim vote. Down 66 points. In effect, that translates to the loss of some 93% of their Muslim voters. That's a total of 1.5 million votes. And I'm reliably informed that that would translate in the loss of some 31 seats that Labour currently hold. 98% of respondents in this poll only had a negative view of both Labour and the Conservatives. And it's because of their stances in relation to the conflict going on in the Middle East between Israel and Gaza. And the Tories are down 8 points to just 1%, incidentally. The Muslim vote has never been an overtly Tory supporting one, but they are down too. Sadly, the biggest winner in all of this is apathy, as though saying they wouldn't vote at all has now risen by 28 points. Those who would vote for an independent, though, has risen 21 points. Those who would vote for the Green Party, up 15 points. The Lib Dems are up 8 points and the SNP up 3 points. But you also have to bear in mind that aside from the Muslim vote itself, there are plenty of other Labour voters who will have been put off voting for the party on the basis of its attitudes towards both Israel and Palestine. As much as many will want the Tories out regardless of how bad the alternative might be, voting for someone leading a party who has advocated for war crimes to be committed and refuses to apologise for them, saying it is a red line of common decency, which of course it is. There are many people dismissing this poll because of how it's conducted, though. It's low quality, they're saying. It's a single issue. Brexit, anyone? I would respectfully say that, for one, you're insulting the entire Muslim demographic who took part in this, dismissing their concerns because, frankly, who else is asking them? And I would also point to the results and the number of respondents and challenge you to keep up that narrative when the results are as absolutely seismic as they are shown to be. Labour is at grave risk of losing a vote it has taken for granted, that Starmer has taken for granted, that they won't go anywhere else, and they're showing that actually they bloody well will. I'll come back to that red line analogy a moment, actually, because I'm not the only one to have used it recently. As one of those 23 now former Labour councillors, Oxford City Council's Shaista Aziz, said prior to Starmer meeting with his Muslim MPs yesterday, which turned out to be a complete waste of time, but I think one good thing that will come out today is that the sheer anger in communities across this country will be clearly articulated. They cannot say they didn't know. What the Labour Party cannot say anymore is that it is marching collectively. There is a lack of respect for us as well, which is why the level of anger and the level of deep hurt across communities is unprecedented. And I don't think the party machinery understands it, because they have no close proximity to our communities, right? They only go into our communities to ask for our votes at key times and to do their PR stunts. That's pretty damning. Also pretty accurate. And when you add on how gravely insulted Muslim communities around the UK must feel now, it's little wonder that vote has seemingly collapsed in the space of days, really. So, consequences. How can we read into how nervous some MPs will be in light of all of this, though? Well, there is an early day motion doing the rounds at the moment, driven by Labour MP Richard Burgon, one of the Socialist campaign group, calling for the protection of civilians in Gaza and Israel, and sponsored by other Labour MPs on the left as well, including John McDonnell and the sadly now deselected Beth Winter. And it's now been signed by 95 MPs in total, though notably not a single Liberal Democrat. They've decided to start their own early day motion, because this one's not good enough for them apparently, even though they're asking for basically the same thing. Desperate for some press attention for themselves and all of this, presumably. What else do the Lib Dems really stand for? If I knew that, perhaps I'd do more videos on them, eh? The Burgham EDM, though, is the one worth paying attention to, though, as it currently has 31 signatories from Labour. That number's doing a lot of lifting in this video, isn't it? Openly in dissent against Starmer's position, though. Not that this is completely analogous, because it isn't, but an estimated 31 Labour seats are vulnerable because of their high Muslim populations, with some big names that ought perhaps to feel a bit nervous. Liam Byrne, he who left the note to the Tories in 2010 saying there was no money left, he's actually got the largest Muslim population by constituency of all MPs. According to the 2021 census, 62% of his Birmingham Hodge Hill constituency identify as Muslim. Other Labour figures in potentially big trouble because of this are Starmer's Secretary of State for Justice Shabana Mahmood, Motormouth Jess Phillips, Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth. All have Muslim voting populations greater than 30%. Starmer is literally in the business of ending the careers of some of his own shadow cabinet here, or some of them on these numbers anyway. And why? Simply because he, as a human rights lawyer, lacks the moral fibre. He, as Yanis Varoufakis put it recently, is a shiver looking for a spine to run up to stand up for Muslims, whose votes here he takes for granted, and stand up for international law and knock back war crimes. Because that's not exactly a high bar for any human, is it? Let alone a former human rights barrister. And of course, whatever you think of that poll, and whatever you think of those numbers, and whether you dispute the methodology involved or not, by not shifting his position, by not facing up to the reality of the mess he's made for himself, things can and will only get worse for him. He's not going to be winning lost support back by doubling down. He's only going to keep losing more. And actually, it's time this began to reflect on those in that shadow cabinet right now, and others on the parliamentary benches, and those resignations from his shadow cabinet that haven't already begun, because they're tying their careers at this moment in time to his arrogance, to his ignorance, and to his unapologetic, insulting stupidity. What does that say of the rest of them? And as such, do they really deserve to keep their seats anyway if they're going to carry on the way they are? Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Do have your say on all of this in the comments below as well. Be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where all of this very much undermines the messaging coming out of Labour over the weekend that they're prioritising winning a general election over calling for peace in the Middle East. But if the Muslim vote is collapsing over Labour's lack of a call for a ceasefire and the lack of an apology to them for backing a war crime, one very much seems to depend on the other right now, doesn't it? Try convincing Labour's leadership of that right now, though, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.